I have a question for you. When you think of a good friend, or, let's get specific to our topic today, a Christian care mentor, what does that look like in your head?
I think for most of us, the image is pretty standard.
Yeah.
It's the person who drops everything.
Right. It's the 3.0 a.m. phone call. You pick up, you're groggy, maybe you have a big meeting the next day, but you say, I'm here.
Of course.
We have this deeply ingrained cultural script that says real love, sacrificial love. It means being available 24/7.
It's the always-on culture of compassion.
Yeah.
We start equating exhaustion with holiness. It's like, if I'm not tired, I must not be loving enough.
Wow, that is such a heavy thought. If I'm not tired, I'm not loving enough. But today we're looking at a source that, it basically takes that idea, crumples it up, and just throws it in the trash.
It does.
We're doing a deep dive into a training module, specifically Chapter 8, Boundaries, from a draft guide called The Christian Care Mentor. And the argument here is honestly kind of jarring. It argues that saying no, it's not a rejection. It's actually the highest form of compassion.
It feels jarring because it goes so against our instincts. But this chapter makes the case that without boundaries, you aren't just hurting yourself. You are actively dismantling the relationship you're trying to build.
That's a big claim.
It is. We're going to look at why boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, but are what the source calls sacred spaces that protect the integrity of the mentorship.
Sacred spaces. It sounds beautiful, but I'll be honest, when you're in the thick of it, setting a boundary doesn't feel sacred.
No.
It feels mean. It feels like you're abandoning someone.
And that guilt, that feeling right there is exactly what we need to unpack.
Yeah.
Because the source opens with a story that perfectly illustrates that trap.
The story of Jack and Paul.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's get into Jack's story, because I think a lot of us have been Jack. So Jack is the mentor. He volunteers to walk alongside Paul. And Paul is in just a brutal situation. He's the primary caregiver for his wife, who has advanced Parkinson's disease.
And we really have to pause on the weight of that.
Yeah.
Advanced Parkinson's it's progressive, it's relentless. So Paul isn't just dealing with a bad week, he's watching his wife slowly disappear. The emotional toll there is massive.
So the conversations are raw, they're heavy, and Jack, well-intentioned guy that he is, he steps in with this Christian care mindset.
Right.
He thinks his job is to be the lifeline. The source says he welcomed every call day or night. He basically threw his doors wide open.
And he fell into the classic trap.
Yeah.
He confused caring with carrying.
Ooh, that's good. Caring versus carrying. Say more about that.
Well, Jack thought that to show love, he had to carry Paul's anxiety for him. But what happened?
It just spiraled. The source describes this really visceral shift in Jack. He started getting anxious every time the phone rang. You know that feeling?
Oh, yeah.
The stomach drop when you see the caller ID?
To dread.
Exactly, the dread. And then he would hang up the phone, but he wouldn't stop thinking about it. He'd replay Paul's stories in his head at night. He couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
And the logic keeping him awake was, if I don't answer, who will help him?
And that question right there, if I don't answer, who will? That is the siren song of the savior complex.
Savior complex. Okay, that sounds a bit dramatic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's just trying to be a good guy.
It does sound dramatic, but it's accurate. It's that moment the mentor stops being a guide and starts unconsciously trying to take the place of God.
Wow.
Jack felt the weight of responsibility for Paul's life slipping onto his shoulders. And the source is very, very firm on this. That is a weight Jack was never designed to carry. He's human. He has limits.
And limits usually make themselves known one way or another. For Jack, it came to a head when Paul asked him to make a specific decision regarding his wife's care.
Which is just a terrifying position to be in. Paul is drowning, and he's handing the life raft steering wheel to Jack.
And this is where the rubber meets the road. I put myself in Jack's shoes, and I think I would have crumbled. I would have just given an opinion because I wanted the pressure to stop.
Me too. Absolutely.
But Jack didn't. He went to his program lead, which is a smart move, and he reset the boundary. And I want to read the script he used, because it's so simple, but I can imagine how hard it was to say.
Yeah, go for it.
He told Paul, Paul, I care deeply about you, but I can't make this decision for you.
And notice what he did there. He affirmed the relationship, I care deeply, but he rejected the responsibility. I can't make this decision.
But here's what shocks me. If I were Paul and I was that desperate and my mentor said that to me, I feel like I'd be angry. I feel like I'd say, what are you even here for then?
That's the fear. That's the fear that keeps us from setting boundaries. We fear the backlash. But what does the source say actually happened?
It says Paul didn't pull away. It says he grew stronger. He started trusting his own discernment again.
Because Jack gave the load back to the person it belonged to. When Jack stopped trying to carry Paul, Paul remembered he had legs. He realized he had to, and he could face this decision himself.
So the relationship actually became healthier.
Much healthier.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't based on dependency anymore.
So by saying no to the decision, Jack was actually saying yes to Paul's dignity.
Exactly. It's all about empowerment. But this isn't just some psychological trick. The source spends a good amount of time grounding this in theology. They call it the philosophy of the sacred space.
Yeah, and they don't mess around. They go straight to the example of Jesus.
They do. And this is such a crucial counter-argument for anyone who thinks boundaries are somehow unchristian. The text cites Luke 5:16. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. That's Jesus. He's God. Maybe he withdrew to pray, but he didn't have to, right? I mean, he has infinite capacity.
Well, theologically, Jesus was fully God and fully man. He experienced fatigue. He experienced being drained.
Okay.
And the source argues that his withdrawal wasn't just some quirky habit, it was spiritual wisdom. He literally walked away from crowds. There were sick people he didn't heal in that moment. There were people clamoring for him, and he turned his back and walked up a mountain.
That is a wild image. Jesus walking away from needs.
He withdrew to remain grounded. If he didn't meet every demand, who are we to think we should? The source basically argues that boundaries are what allow us to stay connected to the source of our strength.
So boundaries aren't selfishness. They're sustainability.
Right. And to help visualize this, the Minsterity framework uses a metaphor that I think is really, really helpful. Fences versus walls.
Okay, break this down for me, because in my head, a fence and a wall, they do the same thing. They keep people out.
Not exactly. Think about a brick wall. It's a barrier. You can't see through it. You can't talk through it. It completely blocks connection. If I put up a wall, I'm cutting you off.
Right, okay.
Now think about a fence, like a picket fence between neighbors. It defines property lines. It says, this is my yard and that is your yard.
Sure.
I can lean over the fence and talk to you. I can open the gate and invite you in for coffee. But there's a clear distinction of ownership. I don't mow your lawn and you don't mow mine.
I like that. So boundaries and mentoring are fences. They define where my responsibility ends.
And yours begins. Yes, it prevents that emotional enmeshment where you don't even know whose feelings you're feeling anymore.
Which brings us to the job description. The source has this section on what a mentor is and what a mentor is not. And honestly, reading through it, I realized how blurry my own definitions have been.
It starts with a verse from Galatians 6:5. Each of you should carry your own load.
But wait, doesn't the Bible also say carry each other's burdens? That sounds like a contradiction.
It does, and the source makes this fascinating distinction based on the original Greek words used there. Burdens refers to crushing weights like. Boulders that we need help with, grief, tragedy, we help with those.
Okay.
But load in Galatians refers to a soldier's daily pack. It's the daily responsibility of life that belongs to the individual.
So we help with the boulders, but we don't carry their backpack.
Precisely.
Okay, let's run down the list then. According to the source, a mentor is a compassionate listener, a peer with lived experience, a source of encouragement, and a guide to resources.
All good things.
Yeah.
No arguments there. It's the is not list that usually ruffles some feathers. A mentor is not a professional counselor or therapist.
Meaning, don't try to diagnose people from your armchair.
Exactly. They are not a medical, legal, or financial advisor. Even if you're a lawyer in your day job, in this role, you are a mentor. You have to stay in that lane.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest one, the one that's bolded in the text, a mentor is not a rescuer.
That one feels harsh. Not a rescuer. I mean, if someone is drowning, don't you rescue them?
If they're physically drowning, yes, of course. But in the context of caregiving, dealing with dementia, aging, chronic illness, these are situations that often cannot be fixed.
Right.
If you enter the relationship thinking, I'm going to save them from this pain, you have already failed.
Because you can't save them from the reality of the disease.
Exactly. And if you try, you'll burn out and you'll make them feel like a project.
Yeah.
The goal is companionship, not rescue. It's walking with, not carrying for.
Okay, I'm sold on the philosophy. I am. But I'm sweating thinking about the execution. How do we actually set these fences up without making it super awkward?
It is awkward.
It feels weird to sit down with a friend and say, here are my terms and conditions.
It does. But the source advises establishing ground rules immediately, like day one, before a crisis ever hits.
Why before?
Because if you wait until you are exhausted and angry to set a boundary, it feels like a punishment. It feels personal.
Right. You called me too much, so now I'm cutting you off. Ouch.
Yeah. But if you said it at the very beginning, it's just the container for the relationship. It's about safety.
So what are we agreeing on, like, specifically?
Logistics, mostly. How often will we meet? How long are the meetings? What is the best method of contact?
The text also mentions explicitly agreeing on confidentiality limits, and it quotes 1 Corinthians 14:33. God is not a God of disorder, but of peace.
And the argument is that structure brings peace. Ambiguity brings anxiety. Think about it. If a caregiver knows for a fact that you are available every Tuesday at 7:0 p.m., they can save their questions for then.
Oh,
They don't have to panic on Monday night wondering if they are allowed to call you.
that makes so much sense. The structure actually lowers the anxiety for both people. But, okay, let's say we messed up, we didn't set the rules early, or we just let them slide. The source lists red flags that indicate our boundaries are failing.
The warning lights.
Yeah. What should we be looking for?
The first one is overdependency. If the caregiver feels they cannot function or make a move without checking with you first, that's a massive red flag.
That's the decision paralysis we saw with Paul earlier.
Exactly. The second is emotional exhaustion. And I don't mean just being tired after a long day. I mean dread. If you see their name on your phone and you feel your energy just drain out of your body before you even answer, your body is telling you something is wrong.
The source also mentions guilt-driven compliance.
That's a big one. It's doing things because you feel bad, not because it's the right thing to do. If your primary motivation is avoiding guilt, you aren't mentoring anymore. You're just managing your own anxiety.
And finally, neglecting your own spiritual or relational health. They quote Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it.
And guarding your heart is not about being cold. It's about preserving your ability to love well. If the well runs dry, you have no water to give anyone. You have to guard the source.
This leads us perfectly into the second case study. It's a role-play scenario with Linda, a caregiver for a mother with dementia, and Paul. But in this story, Paul is the mentor. And the scenario is so relatable, it hurts.
It targets that specific moment of decision fatigue. It really does.
So Linda is totally overwhelmed. The doctor has given her options for her mom's care. She's terrified of making the wrong choice. And she looks at Paul and says, "What do you think I should do? You've been through this. Just tell me."
Pause right there. That is the moment. That is the siren song. Just tell me.
It is so incredibly tempting to just give the answer.
Why, though? Why do we want to answer so bad?
I think because we want to fix the pain. We see she's anxious, and we know that if we give her an answer, her anxiety will go away, at least in the short term. It makes us feel useful.
But the source says giving the answer is the wrong move.
Yeah.
It is, because if Paul tells her what to do, he takes ownership of the outcome. If he says, choose option A, and option A goes badly, that's on Paul.
Oh.
And more importantly, Linda hasn't learned to trust herself. She's learned to trust Paul.
So let's look at the right move, the script the source provides. Paul starts with validation. He says, "That sounds really heavy, Linda. Anyone in your position would feel unsure."
Step 1. Validate the emotion. Don't dismiss the fear. Just sit with her in it for a second.
Then comes the fence. "I care about you, and I want to support you, but I can't make medical decisions for you."
So clear. Kind. Firm. He defines what he is not. He is not the doctor.
But he doesn't stop there. And this is the part I think I would miss. He pivots. He asks, "What questions do you still have for the doctor? And who else could help you talk this through?"
See what he did. He shifted from providing an answer to facilitating a process. He turned Linda back toward her own resources, her own intellect, her own discernment.
It's almost like coaching.
It is coaching. And the outcome in the role play is that Linda decides to write down her questions. She takes a concrete step.
And Paul suggests praying for clarity. So he supports her spiritually, but he leaves the dignity of the decision in her hands.
The dignity of the decision. I love that phrasing. Because when we rescue people, we often inadvertently strip them of their dignity. We treat them like they can't handle their own lives. Empowering them is the more respectful path, even if it feels harder in the moment.
It really is. It's playing the long game.
Exactly.
There's one last section in the source I want to touch on. It's titled "The Grace of Saying No." It frames boundaries as an integrity issue.
Which goes back to Matthew 5:37. Let your yes be yes and your no, no.
We usually think of that verse as being about, not lying, but the source applies it to commitment.
Well, think about it. If I can't say no to you, can you ever really trust my yes?
Whoa! Say that again?
If I am incapable of saying no, then when I say yes, You don't know if I actually mean it, or if I'm just too scared or too guilty to refuse. My yes becomes cheap.
And it breeds resentment.
Massive resentment.
Oh, that's the worst feeling. When you know someone is helping you, but you can feel them seething underneath.
It's just performance.
Yeah.
And performance isn't love. The source argues that for your care to be authentic, your boundaries have to be real. You have to be able to say, I can't do that, so that when you say, I can do this, the person knows you are 100% there.
That is huge. Performance isn't love. That's going to stick with me.
It should.
The source wraps up with some thoughts and tips for mentors to navigate this. We've covered a few like setting limits before exhaustion hits, but there's one here I like. Reset boundaries calmly.
You don't get angry. If a boundary is crossed, it's usually not malice. It's usually just need. The caregiver's drowning. They aren't thinking about your schedule.
Right.
You just gently put the fence back up. You don't have to yell.
And expect resistance.
That's a reality check. When you start saying no, people might be confused. They might be disappointed.
Sure.
That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means the dynamic is changing. So you stay kind, but you stay consistent.
So if we zoom out and look at this whole Chapter 8 module, what's the big headline here?
The headline is that the sacred space of mentoring depends on the mentor knowing where they end and the other person begins.
It's all about protection.
It is. Boundaries protect three things. They protect the caregiver from unhealthy dependency. They protect the mentor from burnout. And ultimately, they protect the relationship itself from becoming toxic.
By saying no to the wrong things, like being a savior or a doctor or a 247 hotline, you are clearing the space to say yes to the right things.
Like listening, praying, being a faithful friend, faithful, sustainable presence. That's the goal.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with something to chew on. We talked a lot about guilt today, that feeling that if we say no, we're bad people. The source had a reflection question that honestly it floored me.
I know exactly which one you mean. It flips the script on guilt completely.
Usually we view guilt as a moral compass, right? I feel guilty, therefore I should do more. Guilt is driving the bus.
But the source asks, what if guilt isn't a sign of a deficit in your love? What if it's a warning signal that you are trying to carry a load that theologically and practically isn't yours to carry?
And then here's the kicker they added. What if that guilt is actually pride in disguise?
Oof, that's the part that hurts.
It's saying, I feel guilty because I think I should be able to do it all. I think I should be able to be the savior.
It's the arrogance of believing you have no limits. It's admitting that you are trying to do God's job.
Wow. Is your guilt actually pride? That is uncomfortable, but in a really necessary way.
It's a question worth asking the next time you hesitate to say no. Are you hesitating out of love or out of a need to be the hero?
Listeners, I think we all have some thinking to do. Check your fences this week. Are they standing? Are they gates? Or have they become walls? Or maybe they've fallen down completely. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Take care.